There's this strange push in the lever gun world to always go bigger. Like choosing .44 Magnum automatically means you made the smart pick. It doesn't. Most of the time, it just means you bought a rifle that's louder, hits your shoulder harder, and somehow gets half the range time you swore it would. This is Mark from the Armory, and that whole more power equals better rifle mindset collapses the minute you look at how people actually run these guns. On paper, the numbers sound awesome, but recoil, ammo cost, and real-world shootability show up fast. And that's exactly where .357 Magnum starts making a whole lot more sense. Expectation versus reality. You ever notice how some guys get locked in on .44 Magnum like it's the only serious option? Then you watch them shoot it for real. First few shots, yeah, it feels incredible. Big boom, big push. Everybody on the line looks over. But give it 10, 15 rounds, and the tempo changes. You're not running the rifle anymore. You're managing it. Hands clamp down tighter. Shots slow out. And that smooth lever cadence everyone brags about, it starts fading. I watched it happen on a hot range afternoon. Brand new Marlin in .44 Magnum. Dude was fired up to run it. A couple tube loads in, he's stretching time between shots, setting the rifle down more than he expected. Nothing wrong with the gun. It's doing exactly what it's built to do. It just takes more out of you than people want to admit, and that part never shows up in the more power argument. Then you pick up a .357 lever gun, and it's like the whole experience resets. Same style rifle, but now you're actually working the gun the way a lever gun is meant to be worked. Those 158 grain loads out of a carbine are trucking along in that 1,700 to 1,900 range. And recoil stays light enough that you stop thinking about it. You just keep shooting. No hesitation, no mental buildup. That's where expectation and reality split. One choice sounds like the upgrade when you're standing at the counter. The other one ends up being the rifle you enjoy so much. You keep dragging it back to the range. What changes when you put .357 Magnum in a rifle? Running .357 Magnum out of a lever gun doesn't feel like you just slapped a stock on a handgun round. It feels like a completely different cartridge. Out of a 4-inch revolver, a 158 grain load usually lives around 1,200 to 1,300 feet per second. Step into a 16 to 18-inch carbine, and that same load jumps into the 1,700 to 1,900 neighborhood, sometimes brushing past it, depending on the ammo. That's a 400 to 600 feet per second gain, which is massive. Energy climbs from roughly 500 foot-pounds in a handgun to 1,000 plus out of a rifle. You're basically doubling the effectiveness without changing caliber. And you feel that immediately once you start stretching distance. At 50 yards, both are easy. Push to 100 and the rifle-like behavior starts making sense. You're not lobbing rounds anymore. You're placing them. Steel gives cleaner feedback too. Hits feel more decisive than people expect from just a .357. The part that doesn't get enough love is that all of this comes without the trade-offs folks accept with .44. Recoil energy on a light lever gun in .357 usually lands around 3 to 5 foot-pounds depending on the load. A comparable .44 setup can jump into the 10 to 12 range. That gap is why one rifle lets you run 10 rounds back-to-back without thinking, while the other one slows you down, whether you admit it or not. Capacity and ammo flexibility stack on top of that. Most tube magazines hold around 9 to 10 rounds of .357 versus 7 to 8 in .44. Then you've got .38 Special, which can cut recoil even more and usually costs a lot less per round. That combo, velocity gain, manageable recoil, and cheaper practice, is what turns .357 into something way more capable than it looks on paper. Recoil is the silent deal breaker. You don't really see recoil when you're staring at charts. You feel it after about 20 rounds, when your pace starts slipping and you don't even realize why. That's the piece people ignore when they grab a .44 lever gun, thinking it's just a stronger version of the same experience. Out of a typical 6.5 to 7.5 pound carbine, a standard 240 grain .44 load is pushing recoil energy somewhere around 10 to 12 foot-pounds. That's more than double what you're dealing with in .357, which usually sits in the 3 to 5 range with 158 grain loads. Those numbers sound small until you're the one cycling that lever over and over. Spend a full range session behind both, and the difference is not subtle. Your shoulder starts bracing for the 44. Grip tightens. You wait a little longer between shots, and your follow-ups lose that smooth, almost automatic lever gun rhythm. Accuracy even drops for a lot of shooters. Not because the rifle can't shoot, because the shooter starts managing recoil instead of living on sight, picture, and trigger. The 357 just doesn't do that to you. It stays light, fast, predictable. Even after a couple boxes, you can run 10 rounds through the tube, top it off, and keep moving without thinking about it. And for most people, that matters more than raw energy. Because the rifle that beats you up a little is the rifle you shoot less over time. And once that happens, all that extra power doesn't mean much sitting in the safe. The ammo reality nobody budgets for. Ammo cost is where the whole just go 44 idea starts falling apart once you're actually buying it week after week. Walk into a shop or scroll any major retailer and it smacks you immediately. A basic box of Winchester Super X 44 Magnum, 240 grain JSP usually sits around $60 to $70 per 50 in a lot of shops lately. Step up to something like Federal American Eagle 44 Mag, and you're in that same neighborhood. Sometimes higher depending on availability. Even Remington UMC loads hover around 40 to 55 if you can find them. That's roughly 90 cents to $1.30 per round. And that's just standard range ammo, not premium hunting loads. Run a realistic day, say 150 rounds, and you're looking at $135 to $195 burned in one afternoon. That's where behavior changes. You don't shoot loose. You don't dump a tube just because. Every reload feels like a decision. That lever gun rhythm slows down, and you start treating the rifle like something you manage, not something you run. Now flip to 357. A box of Blazer Brass 158 grain 357 Magnum usually lands around $25 to $35 per 50. MagTech 357 sits right there too, sometimes even a bit cheaper. That's about 50 to 70 cents per round. Then you've got 38 Special, and that's where this caliber really opens up. Winchester White Box 38 Special, or Federal Champion, often drops into the $18 to $28 per 50 range, so roughly 35 to 55 cents per round. Same 150 round day. Now you're spending somewhere between $55 and $100. Instead of pushing $200, that's not a small gap. That's the difference between shooting once in a while and actually getting reps in. And the rifle you can afford to keep feeding? That's the one that stays out of the safe. Capacity and shooting rhythm. Run a few lever guns side by side, and capacity stops being theory real quick. Take a Henry Big Boy Steel 44 Magnum with a 20-inch barrel. Load it with 44 Special, and you might see around 10 in the tube. And with some loads and how you top off, you can run it as 10+1. Now switch to full-length 44 Magnum, and it generally stays right around that 10-round neighborhood with minor variation based on cartridge length. Same story with a Marlin 1894 in 44 Magnum. On the newer Ruger builds with the tubular magazine and side loading gate, you're typically looking at 10 rounds of 44 Rem Mag or 11 rounds of 44 Special, depending on what you load. That limit still shows up fast. A couple seconds of shooting, then you're back to feeding rounds one at a time, or pulling the tube on a Henry. Stay on that setup for a full session, and the rhythm never really locks in. Shoot, pause, load, reset. Nothing wrong with the rifle, but the flow keeps getting interrupted. It starts feeling like short bursts instead of a continuous run. And over time, you're working around the gun instead of running it. Now swap to something like a Henry Big Boy Steel 357 Magnum or a Rossi R92 and 357 Magnum. And you notice the difference immediately. Same tube magazine, same manual of arms, but slimmer cartridges mean more rounds on board. On a 20-inch gun, you'll often see 10+1 in 357. On a 16-inch Rossi, it's commonly 8 in the tube. And with 38 Special, you can sometimes push 12 or more, depending on the rifle and how it's set up. More rounds in the tube means more time actually shooting. You stay on the sights, keep working the lever, Hold a steady cadence without constant interruptions. It finally feels like the rifle is moving with you, instead of yanking you out of the moment. Where the .44 Magnum actually wins. Get past the bench and into real hunting distance, and priorities change fast. Nobody's counting rounds in the tube when there's a hog standing in front of you. Power and penetration start driving the whole conversation. And this is where .44 Magnum really does pull ahead in a way you can feel, not just read. A 240 grain load out of a lever gun is usually moving around 1,700 to 1,800 feet per second, putting out roughly 1,500 to 1,700 foot-pounds of energy. That's a real step up from .357, especially when you're dealing with tougher animals. You notice it when the shot isn't perfect, hit a shoulder, catch a bad angle, run into thicker muscle. That heavier bullet just keeps driving. It holds momentum better, and it gives you more forgiveness when things don't line up clean. The .357 can still do the job, especially inside 75 to 100 yards with good ammo, but it asks more from you. .44 gives you more margin when things get unpredictable. Not magic, just more breathing room when it counts. Inside about 100 to 150 yards. It hits hard enough that you're not second-guessing whether it'll get the job done. If the plan actually involves hunting and not just range time, this is where .44 starts feeling like the right tool instead of just the bigger one. Who should buy the .44 Magnum and who shouldn't? There's a very specific shooter who truly benefits from a .44 lever gun, and it's not the guy at the counter thinking bigger automatically means better. It's the one who already knows that rifle has a job waiting for it. Hunting hogs in thick brush, short-range deer work, situations where shots aren't always clean, and you want extra penetration without second-guessing it. That's where the caliber fits. Not flashy, not exciting, just practical for that role. But drop that same rifle into a range-only routine, and it starts working against you. You don't shoot it as much because ammo costs more. You don't run it as hard because recoil stacks up. Range sessions get shorter without you meaning for that to happen. And over time, it becomes something you respect more than you actually use. That pattern shows up again and again once the novelty wears off. The .357 is built for a different kind of owner. Someone who wants to shoot often, keep costs under control, and build real familiarity with the rifle. It's lighter to run, easier to stay consistent with, and flexible enough to cover everything from casual range time to light hunting without feeling like a compromise. The split is pretty simple once you stare at it honestly. If the rifle is tied to real field work, .44 earns its spot. If it's meant to be shot regularly, practiced with, and enjoyed without overthinking every trigger press, most people end up better off with .357. Before we close this out, here's the question. If you could only own one lever gun for the next 5 years, are you going .44 Magnum or .357 Magnum? And what job are you assigning it? Drop your pick in the comments. And if you want more no-hype, real-world breakdowns like this, subscribe to The Armory.